Hello, YouTube and BitChute friends. I think I will put this on BitChute as well. I don't know if anybody goes to BitChute. I haven't gone there myself. I'm going to just chime in through personal experience on what I believe to be illness. Illness. What is illness? And I've been going through what people can very well agree on when they don't feel good about something, when something isn't working. Physically, I mean, it's like an illness. There's an illness. It's not normal. When something isn't normal, it's an illness. So I'm going to chime in on what fundamentally I think is illness. I was diagnosed clinically with a stage 4 prostate cancer about a little over a year and a half ago. And what is illness is fundamentally underlying all illness, I believe, is a form of trauma. Emotional could also be a physical trauma, but I think emotional trauma is underlying all illness. And that trauma may not be recognized, maybe an unconscious thing. And the other thing that is recognized is fear and anxiety. So illness is based on the level of fear and anxiety in a body. Quite often we resort, I include myself, to partake in certain unadvised habits, smoking, drinking in excess, all that kind of stuff, which adds to our fundamental weakness that allows illness to take hold. And what is illness? And I'm quite grateful to a YouTuber who has a large following. I think a lot of people recognize something in this person who has phenomenal blind spots as well. But as far as the idea of cancer is concerned, he was very helpful to me in terms of indicating, confirming in me something that made sense. He basically endorsed optimal vitamin. I think the body requires nourishment and has requirements. It's essentials that are important. I mean, if you don't have oxygen, you die. You stop breathing, you die. It's literally like that. It's like you stop eating, you can survive for maybe a month, not without water. If you don't have water, you die. So there are certain essentials that are required in order for us to be healthy, or even just to work reasonably well. And if those things are diminished or even influenced by elements that are unwanted, we do want certain elements like vitamins and nutrients that help us. We also don't want toxins, poisons, all those things that are all around us. So illness, fundamentally, I'm going to sort of break down my experience of illness and the idea of overcoming how one proceeds. And I'm not through this process. I believe that I have overcome what was considered the cancer, the metastasized cancer. Metastasis in cancer apparently is the crucial aspect. If you have a tumor and you let them go in and dig it out and all that, I guess there is something to that. It can work. It's not my experience. I don't want to be surgically entered, but the idea of the cancer as a metastasized condition, and this is something that Cliff High said. He considers cancer a metabolic condition. It's not an illness per se, it's a metabolic condition, but it reflects itself. Well, if it goes to its conclusion, it eats you up. It's like he says, 45 units of nutrients go to feed the cancer, and two units of nutrients go to feed your cells, and you'd starve to death, basically. This is an interesting explanation of cancer. It basically starves you to death. So it's a metabolic condition. It's not a disease. It's something that happens within the body that progresses if it isn't reversed within our bodies. And the therapies that are recommended and suggested have literally, I'm talking about white coats, the charlatans that have taken the field that don't cure anything. They just treat certain symptoms that we have. Their success rate is 3%, and I would imagine out of that 3%, a lot of them are misdiagnosed. The success stories, they were misdiagnosed in the first place. Organic dark roast coffee with a bunch of shaga in it. I'm very big on the medicinal mushroom, the shaga, and a few other things that I might mention today that have been added. And there have been some additions, some phenomenal additions to my regimen of towards becoming healthy, feeling really good with everything. As I say, I'm not feeling entirely right, but generally speaking, there is a level of wellness now that I didn't have a year ago. And a lot of it was based on the a deep kind of anxiety and fear, something that is even unconscious in many ways. I mean, whatever I'm going through, I was thinking about this, is in a sense a learning experience. It's kind of like an adventure if you want to get really optimistic about it, which is tough. I mean, it's hard to go through when you are sleepless and say, oh, it's an adventure of sleeplessness. No, it doesn't work that way, I guess. But uh, once we're at a certain point, I think we can reflect on ourselves. And like I'm reflecting on myself and saying, well, this was interesting, my first experiences with this condition. As I say, like Cliff High, I really respect his insight into this. He cured himself of cancer with his protocols, which includes the medicinal mushroom, particularly shaga, optimal vitamins. He had a few other things. Obviously, diet is crucial. I've talked about this. The idea of keto essentially just to me meant getting rid of as many carbs and sugars out of the diet. And there are certain kinds of sugars that I'm no longer afraid of. Fructose, a fruit sugar in combination. Um, the way I was quite afraid of carrot beet because they had a high sugar, but it's a different kind of sugar, and I'm no longer believing that it would be detrimental to the reversal of the metastases. I think this is something that has happened in me, even though I am uh, having the sugars, the fruit sugars, not the high ones, not peaches, pears, apples. I stay away from more on the berry side of things, melon and berry side of things. Anyway, that's a whole other sort of thing about the protocols and stuff. But here's the some of the conclusions I have, and based on a person Maria and I have recently met, and there have been some stresses on us, not in terms of my condition, but Maria's going through her own issues, and it has been identified as a cognitive decline, meaning that there are difficulties to formulate sentences, finding words and nouns, not uncommon in people that are even clicking very well. You know, I often go to the pantry looking for, oh, what was it that I wanted to get, right? That sort of moment of, oh, what was it? And then I just sort of back up, beep, 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 and I go, oh, yeah, that's what I wanted. So these are things that happen anyway, but to the extent that they're create anxiety and they're difficulty in terms of our day-to-day life, this is actually uh, important and significant. And uh, there is something happening, and it's disturbing. Like whenever something happens with the head or the mind, or I talk to people and they don't make sense. It's very difficult to conduct a relationship. It's harder to have a relationship when things aren't working the way the mind works. I mean, who is to say people that are autistic have certain abilities and extraordinary abilities compared to people that don't have autism, but they're still difficult to deal with because, they can count like Rain Man, all the toothpicks that fall out of a thing within seconds, but can't tie their shoelace. So there are aspects to this kind of mind thing that happens, which is extremely curious. And here are some conclusions. Illness in general, including what is understood to be dementia or Alzheimer, but generally speaking, I'm going to verbalize my conclusions on some of this. And one of the things I've always known, actually, Maria, quite a while back, talked to me about this. She was very much into alternative healing and understanding how we work, um, not from the perceptual, but from the intrinsic sort of nature of our being. Like we perceive something, but that's open interpretation. How does it actually work? And one of the examples she gave me, I don't know where she got it, if she thought it herself or got it somewhere, but the epidemic of heart attacks and people dying from heart attacks. I think it can be reasonably well established, assumed, established. I would say it's quite certain to me that most heart attacks are heart breaks, which is again related to this component of trauma, emotional trauma, that becomes in some form or other lodged in our bodies. In some form, it takes hold. And if you think of yourself in terms of having had experiences that were extremely difficult, maybe possibly at a younger age, from 0 to 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever, and onward. I mean, there is no time restriction, but I think it's most impressive when we're younger. If we're abused in some form, those traumas tend to lock themselves into our bodies without our knowing and influence us all the way through life. So the premise that I'm going by is that my own condition, my own succumbing to, is a combination of things. What I said, the introduction of poisons that have no place in the body that accumulate. That's not a good idea. But also a level of stress and distress that uh, manifested itself in different areas of my body, in weaker areas of my body, for whatever reason. So, guys seem to have a lot of issues. It appears it's an epidemic too. Prostate cancer, right? The whole prostate thing is like a big epidemic, like a real epidemic, not like a fake epidemic. I can't say on YouTube that COVID was a shit show and a fake epidemic. This is actually a real epidemic. But what is the epidemic? Is it where the symptom is located, or is it something more profound? So what I'm going to uh, venture to understand and introduce in this explanation of illness is that I think maybe I did a video and I mentioned this. We've come across what in Spanish is called a curandera, which is a healer, a person that has special abilities. And I believe she has special abilities. She's actually in our town. And we have transitioned from the naturopathic route. This person is beyond naturopath. I think there's maybe overlaps. And even she acknowledges to some extent the white coats. I don't think so. I don't think she has any kind of appreciation for those bastards. Same as me. I have no appreciation. Even where they do seem to help, they always kick it over with their ass. So it's kind of like they help on one end and fuck you up on the other end. This is what happened to me. I got poisoned by the antibiotics 4 years ago that they administered in order to stop an infection. Okay, fine. They helped an infection I had, which was quite severe and serious on my intestine. But on the other hand, gave me what is understood to be neuropathy, which is basically a weakening or the nerves being destroyed. this antibiotic destroyed nerves. Now, I'm not debilitated by it. Some people end up being very debilitated, and different antibiotics are even more severe, where people literally die from having been exposed to too much antibiotic. So anyway, yeah, that's another thing. So this idea of shifting from people that I basically appreciate what I went through in terms of my protocols. I did ozone therapy. I did it's called 10 pass ozone. I did many sessions of vitamin C and mistletoe, probably 25 sessions of high doses of vitamin C. Very important. I believe this to be a major factor in the reversal. What I can't say for sure, because I'm not trusting the white coats and their machines and whatever they come up with. I just have to go by how I feel. And in terms of the cancer thing, I have to say I feel pretty good, but I still have some problem peeing, and there's something not quite right. So this lovely person that I'm being treated by, and Maria as well, takes the approach of this idea of trauma, both physical and emotional, preventing the proper messages that the body is able to send to affected areas, or is incapable for some reason of affecting the healing process, which I think our bodies are, the omnipotent being has given us something that is so um, elegant and magnificent. There is no such thing when things are right that we could become ill. May even extend to the idea of longevity, that we tend to believe the idea of being 70, 80, 90, you're going to die. I don't know. I think there may be some connection with for us as living beings, convinced that we only have so much time and then we get sick and we die. And a lot of that is, you know, the wrong message is being sent, whether it's here or in the gut, wherever. Apparently, our intestine have brains, exactly the same cells as we have in our brain. So who knows where the messages come from? The point is that when the directives that the body gives to our afflicted areas don't get through, we stay ill, we become ill, we stay ill. And the root of that illness, I would say, if I was to say percentage-wise, it's hard to imagine, but the trauma, the emotional aspect to our nature is so vital in our well-being that if we're unbalanced emotionally, to the point of, let's say, psychosis, and I think a lot of people are living through at least neurosis, a neurosis being something that still lets you function in a way that, you know, you would say, okay, that's a reasonably normal person, to psychosis, somebody you can't even tell. I mean, the psychotics call politicians like Trudeau or Biden, they're psychotics. They're absolutely psychotics, but not from the point of view of, you know, psychiatrically incapable. No, they don't have a conscience. This is very important. Also, in terms of healing, that the more, the higher level of conscience exists in a person, the more likely that person is to get ill if we go against that conscience. So if this has developed in us, and I believe in I have a romance with eternity. I don't think it's over when we die. There is a continuity, and whatever this, you know, let's call it the soul, carries with it, goes from one place to the next, carrying whatever it learned before. I kind of like that. I sort of, as I say, I romantically am inclined to have this connection to continuity and eternity. So the more developed the conscience, which is the thing that separates psychotics, obviously. I'm not sure the rest of the animal kingdom. I've never been a frog or a giraffe. I don't know. But I would say that from a human perspective, what I understand, conscience is an always growing aspect to our nature. It's something that was instilled and something that is absolutely crucial to respect, regard highly, and not ignore. Because when we ignore, we get into mucky fuck. We screw up. We get sick too. It's like you cannot live with something you regret for a long period of time. And I think as we get older, this becomes more prevalent. It becomes something of a kind of yoke around our neck, what all those regrets are. That, and the higher our level of conscience, and usually we know, but sometimes I imagine that this conscience part of us is quite subliminal. We know, but we don't want to look at it, so we ignore it, and it becomes subliminal, and we don't even are aware of how affected we are by not doing the right thing. All right, so the underlying cause of all illness is this dysfunction that is created by trauma, emotional or a physical hurt of some kind. Whether you lose your child or partner that you're totally in love with, and this is enormous trauma, and it needs to be exorcised. I mean, you don't get rid of it. You can't forget it, but there is a way of dealing with this that the body is able to deal with, that flushes it out and opens the pathways to be able to heal whatever it is. And if we don't do that, we have weak areas in our body that become symptomatic of whether it's your skin going all funny, or whether it's your an organ or a gland or whatever it is becomes affected because it's possibly connected to the trauma, or it's the weakest part of our body that gets affected. So this lady is approaching our healing, and in my case, I have not really experienced a dramatic difference, but I'm beginning to see in Maria a dramatic difference. Let me be cautiously optimistic. Is that the idea? Okay, here's what I think is happening in people generally, not just I'm observing and understanding what I'm going through in my personal relationship, and seeing this person suffer with the difficulty of remembering stuff. And I've come to the conclusion that because I know this person quite intimately and the background, that the traumas that have accumulated and not been able to be flushed out have caused the mind to, or is, the mind is attempting to shut it out, and attempting to shut out certain memories and even unconscious awarenesses. It is also affecting the natural, what we understand to be cognitive processes. So as this evolves, it's not a genetic thing. It's not the nerve endings not functioning properly. It's literally like heart attacks or heartbreaks. This thing in us that is unaddressed, it's blocking the pathways to healing. Literally, the messages are not getting to where they need to go in order for the cells to do what they can do and need to do, the way the omnipotent being has gifted this body, all bodies, with healing mechanisms, but they're blocked because we are unable to resolve these fundamental traumas that exist within us. And these are things that sometimes can be recognized, but the way this curandera is approaching it is her abilities to, in her words, work with the vagus nervous system, which is basically the nervous system's nervous system. If this nerve, this thing that goes through our entire body from the top of our head to the bottom of our feet, is anywhere blocked, the messages don't go where they need to go. So her focus, the way she understands it and explained it to me, is to open this central nervous, the vagus nerve, and among other things, but this is the fundamental manipulation that I understand she does in order to allow the messages to flow once more freely, which will create the healing. Whatever it is you have, whatever it is that is afflicting us, will become healed through this process of innate ability to self heal. Obviously, with some help. You got to have a little help. You got to get a little help from your friends. Now, obviously, you don't have a lot of people, relatively speaking, on the planet that you can rely on to do this. So we have to begin to teach ourselves. And like I said with Cliff High, I appreciated his input in terms of the physical components that are very crucial, the optimal vitamins, the medicinal mushroom. Um, he didn't go much into diet, but I'm pretty sure he did the keto thing as well. And keto for me, basically, like I said, just eliminate carbs and sugars. That quite often means you're eating rich protein, fatty kind of things. Um, but I'm not that kind of an eater. I don't eat the meat. Maybe I'll do some sardines and some fish, but generally speaking, I have the cheese that breaks, let's say a feta cheese or a very crumbly cheddar, an old crumbly cheddar or Parmesan, that kind of add-on to, let's say, butter, milk, cream, not milk. I stay away from milk. I do whipped cream, high-fat cream, which has no carb or sugar. Interestingly, I would have thought milk has lots of carbs and sugars, but cream doesn't. You go figure. Um, so the, the diet is important. Also, I mentioned the fact that I did regular colonics, daily colonics on a Kalema board. Go search yourself. Well, a lot of people never mention it because, oh, excrement. Well, it's important to keep the intestines really clear because you don't want to reabsorb all the toxins that are stuck in there. And the other part, of course, is the whole parasitic side of things. And cancer is uh, I think 100% related to a parasitic condition in the body. So you have parasites, and you got to get rid of the parasites. And the protocol on that, for me, fundamentally was, well, the 10 pass ozone is really, I think, is really quite helpful there, as well as the vitamin C and mistletoe. But more importantly, is what I resorted to, and I found out just recently. I didn't come across this before, but Cliff High also did the fenbendazole. Check out fenbendazole for humans, not for animals, for humans. It's a lab-tested human. It's not a supplement, I guess. It's a treatment. It's a therapeutic in the sense of the capsule contains something that is therapeutic in terms of fighting parasites. And parasites need to be dealt with seriously because probably all have parasites. It's just the degree to which we have them, and we need to take a hold of that aspect of it. Otherwise, the ship sinks. Parasites will just take over, and that's cancer too. It takes over and starves you, and you're done. So the parasite thing. But underlying that, the reason I'm in the position that I'm in is because there is something within me that my own healing processes have been blocked, either through bad behavior in terms of my day-to-day life and the toxins. We can't avoid a lot of the toxins. They're in the food, they're in the air, they're everywhere. So we need to mitigate this in terms of not adding more, obviously. And Maria did 10 sessions of EDTA chelation because she did have high levels of all things antimony. I'm not sure where antimony came from. And what was the other one? Uh, Cadmium? Was it? I think it was cadmium, which is weird because she doesn't. I'm using paints that may have cadmium, but I don't know where that came from. So there are valuable therapies as far as the naturopaths that we went to, but I'm done with them. I don't need them anymore. They were okay. I have shifted because I understand my dis-ease is oriented towards an inability to heal. Once I put myself on the path of diet and the optimal vitamin and the things I'm talking about, there is a level of healing that hasn't kicked in for me. And lo and behold, the person shows up. I come across this person by sheer coincidence. It's like, but they say, the student finds their master when they're ready. You're not going to be able to learn anything from somebody if you're not ready. So maybe I had to go through all this stuff that I've been going through. I still believe in it. I think it's excellent, an excellent way to be on a path of healing. What I was doing, the protocols I was saying, and the curious thing is that Maria was never very enthusiastic about even the naturopathic route that I had taken. She was very simple in terms of her understanding and her own healing. She's not dealing with necessarily a physical, it's more of this cognitive mental thing that was going on, although there are physical repercussions in terms of concentration. She has fallen a few times, but even that, I believe, has somewhat to do with this trauma that is blocking the ability to negotiate through life in a day-to-day way. When this trauma stuff gets in the way, we tend to be vulnerable to the uh, the dangers that lurk in the sense of our own inability to deal with the circumstance in the right way, falling, hurting ourselves, breaking an arm, a wrist, all those kind of things. In some way, yes, they're accidents, but in another way, they're not. And I believe that Maria is very intuitive in these things, and she was not crazy about doing the naturopathic stuff. Uh, I do think she appreciated and understood the importance of the chelation, but then the methylene blue became more of a stretch. And I believe methylene blue. I took methylene blue as well as a kind of reboot to the mitochondria. It's understood to be very helpful in the mitochondria to get everything going. So it's an element that I also believe was very important in my process, but I don't believe Maria ever thought it was important. And if you don't think it's important or think it's going to help, it's not going to help. That's my conclusion. So now I've had a couple of treatments. Maria's had about 8, 6 or 7, 8 maybe treatments from this curandera, and I'm beginning to see. Um, this is very interesting. Okay, in this particular case with her, whenever there was this trauma, what I consider to be her trauma, whatever it could be multiple things. I don't know. Whatever it is that was arising, she would become dizzy, a vertigo feeling. When there was a sense of not that there was a danger, but that there was something happening in her that she didn't like, or the emotions started to well up, there would also be this vertigo thing going on. And in combination with, I mean, it's very disconcerting if you're trying to make a sentence and you're losing some words. The thought is there clearly, but the words don't pop in. That can be very disconcerting, creating an emotional condition that ended up being in this wonky kind of feeling. What I'm saying, her treatments around this idea of flushing trauma will affect her emotions, even though we may not know, I may not understand what it is that has traumatized me. that has blocked me. I may and I may not. Therapy never really worked for me. The talk shit never really worked. Maybe my fault. I don't know. Probably. Um, I can't say definitively. I think I learned something from going through my own talk therapies for a period of time in group sessions and individual sessions. And, you know, actually it was wonderful because that's where I met Maria in one of the what were called group marathons that dealt with people's emotional issues over a period of a week or 10 days. But in essence, there is another level of healing that I've now become aware of that I hadn't thought about, that probably many people don't think about. Some maybe intuitively know, but this level of treatment where a person is gifted to be able to identify the pathways through our body, those energetic lines that are in all of us. We're energetic beings. And if those energetic lines, for whatever reason, are blocked, we're going to get sick. And we can't heal. We can only be treated for the symptoms, which is what the white coats do. They don't cure anything. They just whack a hammer on top of a nail that is your symptom. And it's not going to be healed. It's going to come back to bite you again. That's what I think. It's going to be you're going to be very lucky to escape the consequences of their treatments, because it's getting worse and worse. Because I think they're totally closed to anything that has to do with a cure, for good reason, because they need to make a buck. That's what they think. Imagine if they heal everybody, they're sitting in their office by themselves. Nobody shows up. There's so much to this. There's so much depth. And this is something I always love and appreciate. It's like finding another layer of depth and understanding. And I'll just sort of end it here. What I was thinking about, noodling on just in terms of the general state of affairs in the world, the blind spots that people have. When I talk about this person that has helped me to look at myself in terms of the protocols, the physical protocols of my life, is this Cliff High character who had predictions. I'm not really that keen. His predictions are kind of wonky too. Some seem to be reasonably accurate, and you could interpret it that way. But here's the blind spot that I find: a lot of people that are stuck in their cerebrum, in their cerebral frontal, wherever that lobe, the cortex is, get stuck in a cerebral state that blocks them from understanding that the fundamental essence of our being is to develop the conscience that has been given to us by the omnipotent being. It's there for a reason. We're not psychotics that do as thou wilt Crowley fucks. We're given a conscience. Every human being has been given a conscience, unless they're totally psychotic for some reason, that it was blocked in them in the womb, and there was an demonic intervention to remove the conscience or something. This is the fundamental essence of our being, people. I am convinced this is the highest part of our being, because it allows us to love, truly love. We cannot love without having our conscience really working well. This is what I believe. Or we can go to deeper and deeper levels of our appreciation and love of what it is, who we are, who we have in our life, what we see around us, with a functioning conscience. And this is like overlooked. You know why the word consciousness is so damn close to conscience, is because it's the little keys jingling, keeping your brain cells on consciousness and not conscience, because everything comes out of conscience, not consciousness. Consciousness is a fabulous discussion point. You can dance on a pin of consciousness, but for a human being, who gives a shit? What matters is how you behave while you're here, how you deal with that experience, how you deal with, are you going to pass the lesson on adopting the right approach to your conscience? Do you deny it or do you accept it? And this is, I'm not saying that Cliff High doesn't have a conscience. I'm just saying that he's using his mind to what feels to me diminish something that's even more important than what he's dealing with every day, you know, trying to unravel the meaning of the universe and all its intricacies and being able to predict because you can bypass time and you have 22 trillion pulses a second and we exist in between those pulses. And what a ridiculous thing to actually formulate, because you can't imagine that. You cannot imagine 22 trillion pulses a second, just like you can't imagine nothing. When people say there's nothing when you die, show me nothing. You cannot imagine nothing because we're not used to understanding nothing because everything is there. just try and explain nothing to me. You can't do it. So why do you insist that there is nothing? If you're one of those people who says there is nothing after you die, well, what's nothing? Zero is not a concept that can be dealt with in any way, and the mathematicians pretend they can, but you can't. Well, you can use a zero in computation and stuff and make it work, but it has no relevance in terms of real life. Anyway, that's my tirade about all those people, those head cases that make so much sense, but really have a huge blind spot. And that's, oh yeah, the last point on that is they just become entertainers. The substance of their being is missing because all they are is entertainers. Without conscience, you're just entertainers. You need to be able to conjure this part. That's what I say to myself when I make a painting. It has to deal with a fundamental commitment to living my conscience in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions, whatever that is, when you're doing the painting, right? Anyway, that's how long is it? 40 minutes, 41 minutes. Okay, well, I started working again on some paintings, and I'm working on what I understand. I'm calling them fragments. Fragments. And I'm reviving a part of my my personal art history that goes back to the 80s and the 90s. But it's very difficult to reproduce yourself on something you've done, I find anyway. I'm having a very hard time, even though I did it back whenever I did it, and people say, oh, you know what, those paintings all sold. You should do those again. And I tried it, and it just didn't work. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So you offer me, infinite amounts of money, and I can't do it. I just can't do it. But what I can do is I can use elements and recreate myself based on what I did way back when in the now, in the version who I am now. So that's what I'm working on, and I call them fragments because I still feel fragmented. I have not healed. And I still feel fragmented, but I'm very optimistic that with the help of this curandera, I'm going to make some progress toward a complete healing. That's my objective. I'm optimistic, and well, let's see what happens. I'll keep you updated. All the best.